Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
In the vastness of space, where the stars glimmered like scattered diamonds, the bustling market of Teresh pulsed with life. It was a hotbed of trade, both legal and illegal, the scent of exotic spices mingling with the acrid tang of smoke rising from street vendors. Ships of varying sizes filled the orbit, and down below, the crowd buzzed with a cacophony of languages, each one a story of desperation or hope. John Sterling, a seasoned space pilot with a reputation for humanitarian missions, walked through the throng of bodies, his hands tucked into the pockets of his worn leather jacket. His dark hair tousled from the wind of his recent arrival. He surveyed the chaotic scene with a sense of unease. He had come for supplies, yet his instincts warned him that something was amiss. As he turned a corner, the atmosphere shifted. The air thickened with tension, and the chatter of the crowd dimmed to a low murmur. Curious, John pressed forward, his heart pounding against his chest. It wasn't long before he stumbled upon a large gathering outside a crumbling building. The crowd's eyes were glued to a raised platform, and as he shoved his way through, his stomach dropped. On that platform, a gavel banged, and a voice like gravel echoed through the cheers and jeers of the onlookers. Next up for sale, a rare specimen from the Andromeda sector, an alien girl barely of age, but quite the fighter. John watched as the auctioneer, a sleazy figure with a toothy grin and a voice that dripped with malice, pointed toward a frightened young woman. She was chained, her luminous skin contrasting sharply against the darkness of her captors. Her large, expressive eyes darted around, filled with fear yet sparking a fire of resilience. Something inside John shifted. He could feel the anger boiling within him, igniting a need to act. This was wrong, and he couldn't just stand by and watch. Not anymore. The bidding began, and he heard numbers being tossed around, higher and higher, as men with no morals sought to own her. Each increase was like a dagger in John's heart, twisting deeper with every call. 15,000 credits, a gruff voice shouted from the back of the crowd, sending a ripple of excitement through the onlookers. 17,000, another voice chortled, spitting out the words like venom. 20,000, John shouted before he could rethink his decision. The crowd turned to him, and the auctioneer's eyes lit up with excitement at the unexpected bid. "Do I hear 25? The auctioneer smirked, but John grit his teeth. He had made his choice. With each second that ticked by, the girl's expression haunted him. He had lost too many in his life. He couldn't allow this to happen. Not to her. 25, he called, louder this time, challenging the others. The crowd murmured, impressed or perhaps confused by the boldness of the newcomer. "Going once, going twice," the auctioneer jeered. But John didn't wait. 30,000, he yelled, pushing through the anxious bodies toward the front. The auctioneer coughed, pausing as his gaze narrowed on John's determined expression. "We have a strong offer. 30,000, sold to the man in the leather jacket." The crowd erupted into cheers and boos, but John's world narrowed to the girl on the platform. He could see fear give way to hope in her eyes. With a pounding heart, he rushed forward, ready to rescue her from her chains. As the auctioneer waved him on stage, John's breath caught in his throat. This was it, her freedom, their chance at a new beginning. As he reached her, he heard the resonant click of a collar being removed. Her soft voice, trembling yet strong, whispered, "Who are you?" "I'm John," he replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "And I'm here to set you free." In that instant, their eyes locked, and a spark ignited the air between them, a connection that neither would fully understand but neither could deny. Little did they know, the adventure awaiting them would require more than courage. It would test their very souls. As John removed the last of the chains binding Samata, relief washed over her. The metallic clinks echoing in the air faded, replaced by a silence that felt foreign yet liberating. Samata took a hesitant step forward, glancing around the chaotic scene of the market. The shouts and clamoring of the angry bidders faded into a dull roar, and fear mingled with a flicker of hope in her heart. "Come on," John urged, motioning for her to follow as he caught sight of the gathered guards, their eyes narrowing at the sight of the escaped slave. Adrenaline surged through him. They had to move fast. Where do we go? Samata stammered, her voice laced with uncertainty and barely concealed panic. Back to my ship, John replied, pushing through the now chaotic crowd. He grabbed her hand, their fingers entwining instinctively, and began to weave through the throng. Samata's breath hitched in her throat. This human, this stranger, was saving her. The warmth of his grip contrasted sharply with the cold steel of her chains. Even amidst the chaos, she felt a safety she had almost forgotten. They darted between vendors selling trinkets, scents of fried food wafting through the air. Samata marveled at the strange sights, but knew the reality was dire. The voice of the auctioneer calling for help echoed behind them. Glancing over her shoulder, she spotted two burly guards pushing their way through the crowd, weapons drawn. Panic surged through her, and she stumbled slightly, but John whipped around, steadying her with his free hand. Focus, Samata. We're almost there. With renewed determination, she followed him, their pace quickening as they approached a nondescript ship at the edge of the dock. The sleek silver hull glinted under the neon lights, a beacon of freedom. Once they reached the ship, John quickly punched in the access code, and the door slid open with a hiss. They entered just as the guard's shouts grew louder behind them. Get inside now, John urged, his voice intense but steady as he ushered her in. The engine hummed softly as he initiated the launch sequence, fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. Samata took a moment to catch her breath, leaning against the cool metal wall. She watched John as he worked, his jaw set in concentration. There was an aura of strength and determination about him that drew her in, despite her wariness. As the ship shuddered to life, John glanced back at Samata. You okay? His genuine concern thawed some of the ice that had formed around her heart. I think so, she replied, though her voice wavered. Where are we going? Anywhere but here. He flashed a quick smile, and something shifted in her chest. Before Samata could respond, the ship lurched into action. John expertly maneuvered the craft out of the bustling docks, a smooth takeoff that belied the urgency of their escape. Space stretched out before them, a vast canvas speckled with stars, familiar yet exhilarating. We need to lay low for a bit, John said as they exited the atmosphere, the planet falling away behind them. I have a safe place near a nebula where we can hide out until things cool down. Thank you, John. The words slipped from her lips, dripping with authenticity. I can't believe you did this for me. He turned to face her, his blue eyes piercing through the dim lighting of the control room. You deserve to be free, Samata. No one should have to live in chains. I couldn't just stand by. She felt a warm flutter in her chest, as an alien girl raised under the harsh hands of slavers on her home planet. Kindness was a rare commodity, and John's sincerity began to chip away at her walls. After a moment of comfortable silence, John broke the tension. Why were they selling you? Did you do something wrong? Samata hesitated, memories flooding back. Her family torn apart, her world of vibrant colors turned monochrome. I fought against them. I wouldn't bow. They captured me in a raid. I was taken. John's expression hardened. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for, she countered, her voice gaining strength. You saved me. As the stars twinkled beyond the viewports, Samata and John exchanged a lingering glance, an unspoken understanding blooming between them. The ship glided smoothly through the cosmos, and for the first time in a long while, Samata felt a flicker of something hopeful stirring within her, a flame of possibility igniting against the darkness of her past. John steered the ship toward the distant nebula, the swirling colors reflecting in his eyes. We'll figure it out, you and I. Together. No one will own you again. Together, she echoed softly, testing the word. The depth of what it meant lingered in the air. In that moment, a bond began to form, one built on trust and shared experiences, even amidst the remnants of their pasts. As the ship entered the nebula, Cloud-like tendrils of gas danced across the viewports, casting a surreal glow in shades of purple, blue, and green. John pulled the ship into a stable orbit around a small, uninhabited moon hidden within the celestial mist. He'd chosen this place strategically, a quiet hideaway far from prying eyes, where they could regroup. John powered down the engines and turned to face Samata. "We're safe here for a while," he said, relief washing over him. "At least until they stop looking for us." Samata exhaled a shaky breath, the chaos of their escape finally beginning to settle within her. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and lingering fear. "We rest," John replied, his expression softening. "We need to gather ourselves before we make any further plans. There's a lot to talk about." Samata nodded, though uncertainty clouded her thoughts. She had no home to return to. Her past had been shattered, and now she was adrift in a foreign space, relying on a human she barely knew. The thought both terrified and excited her. John gestured toward the ship's modest living area. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll grab us something to eat." As he disappeared into the small galley, Samata took a moment to explore the space around her. The ship was compact yet functional, adorned with memories of John's travels, framed pictures of planets, a few alien artifacts, and a well-used map sprawled across one wall. She stepped closer to the map, tracing its lines with her fingers, captivated by the idea of adventure. She'd lived her life in servitude, always following orders, always in chains. The thought of freedom sent ripples of hope and fear through her simultaneously. John returned with 2 steaming cups of what appeared to be a stew. "Here," he said, handing her one. "It's not gourmet, but it should fill you up." Samata hesitated before accepting the warm meal. She had not eaten properly in days, her stomach growling in protest. As she took a sip, her eyes widened at the rich flavors flooding her senses. "This is wonderful." John smiled at her delight. "Glad you think so. It's a specialty, a recipe I picked up on one of my trips." He took a seat across from her, his eyes alight with a warm glow. For the first time, they began to talk openly about their lives. John shared stories from his journeys, alien planets bustling with life, strange customs, and some of the more bizarre beings he had encountered. Samata listened intently, the walls of her heart slowly crumbling as John painted a world abundant with kindness and freedom. In return, she recounted snippets of her life and her home world, a place filled with colorful landscapes and vibrant cultures, but marred by the darkness of slavery. She recalled the day she was captured, the clash of warriors ringing in her ears, and the way her heart shattered with the screams of her people. "I fought so hard," she said, her lips trembling slightly. "But it wasn't enough. I thought I could save them. I thought—" John reached across the small table, gently placing his hand on hers. "You did what you could, Samata. Sometimes, that's all we can do." For a moment, their fingers lingered together, a simple touch igniting a spark that made Samata's heart race. The connection felt electric, a bridge built from shared experiences and budding trust. As they spoke, the atmosphere began to shift from one of trepidation to tentative comfort. Laughter bubbled up as she teased him about his corniness and quirks, and he playfully retaliated with stories of clumsy blunders he'd made while navigating unfamiliar worlds. It was a blossoming friendship rooted in shared heartache and mutual respect. When the meal was finished, John stood, beginning to clean up. Samata offered to help, her instincts screaming from years of servitude, but he waved her off. "No need. I can take care of this." He turned towards her, his expression softening again. "You deserve to relax. We both do. We're free now, Samata. You can just be." His words whispered through her, settling in the deeper parts of her soul. She was still grappling with the concept of her freedom, the idea of being more than a survivor of slavery. "John, what happens next?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. He paused, his brow furrowing as he contemplated her question. "We'll figure it out together. But first, we need to lay low until we're sure it's safe. And after that, I hope to help more people like you." he replied earnestly. This galaxy is filled with those who need saving. I want to do what I can to fight back against those who exploit others. The sincerity in his voice sent warmth flooding through Samata. You want to be a hero? John laughed lightly, shaking his head. I'm no hero, just a regular guy who can't ignore the cries for help anymore. As the two sat in the tranquil glow of the nebula, a budding partnership began to form, one that thrummed with promise. They would face the universe together, and as the days unfolded, Samata could see glimmers of excitement mingling with the shadows of her past. I want to help, she began tentatively. If we're going to make a difference, I want to do my part. John beamed. That's the spirit. In that moment, Samata felt a renewed determination. Together, they could begin to forge a new future, a reality where chains were nothing but a thought of the past. It was time to reclaim her life. Days turned into weeks as John and Samata settled into their new normal within the secluded care of the nebula. They worked together to repurpose the ship, forming a routine that embraced exploration and cooperation. Whether it was repairing equipment, gathering supplies, or lingering over meals, a bond blossomed between them, a shared understanding that began to transcend the trauma of their pasts. Despite the comfort they had established, an insidious unease lurked beneath the surface. John kept checking the ship's scans for any signs of pursuit, while Samata, in moments of quiet reflection, found herself haunted by memories of her life prior to captivity. The nightmares returned at odd hours, creeping in uninvited to rob her of peace. One morning, Samata awoke to the soft hum of the ship's engines, a sound that once calmed her, but now felt fraught with uncertainty. She turned over, staring at the dim glow of the control panels. The ship was at rest, but that didn't mean they were safe. After a brief breakfast, John announced, I need to do a systems check. Want to join me and take a look at the controls? Samata nodded, grateful for the distraction. As they moved to the cockpit, John explained each dial and switch. This is the radar system. We can pick up movement and potential threats from a considerable distance. As he spoke, Samata felt the weight of unspoken words pressing down upon her. John, what if they find us? She finally asked, the fear threading through her voice. John's expression turned serious. They might. We have to stay vigilant, but we're prepared. This ship has some tricks to evade detection. Deep space is vast, and we can maneuver well enough to avoid confrontation. Samata swallowed hard, the reality of their situation dawning on her. But what if they come looking for me? What if? They won't get you, he interrupted, looking her in the eyes with fierce conviction. Not while I'm here. His words wrapped around her, igniting a spark of courage that had dimmed after her harrowing experiences. She nodded, hoping to believe in the resolve he promised. Once the systems check was complete, John decided they should go exploring the isolated moon surrounding them. Let's take a walk. Clear our minds. They descended to the moon's surface, stepping onto the alien soil that felt both foreign and inviting. The environment was stunning, with a silvery landscape littered with crystalline formations that shimmered under the light of distant stars. As they ventured further, fauna beguiled them. Creatures that danced on the breeze, vibrant flowers that emitted gentle melodies, and the distant call of an unfamiliar life form. It felt like a new beginning, a space where both of them could shed the burdens they carried. It's beautiful here, Samata breathed, losing herself in the wonders around them. John smiled, watching her eyes light up in wonder. Yeah, it really is. There's a sense of peace in being away from the chaos of the market, just us and nature. As they explored, something unexpected shifted in Samata. A quiet strength began to grow, nudging her from the shadows of her previous life. She recalled the way she had once rallied her people, igniting a fire in them to resist. Perhaps she had more to offer than just her past as a slave. John, she said, her voice brimming with newfound resolve. I want to learn. I want to be able to stand up against those who would harm others. He turned, eyes narrowing with interest. You want training? Yes, she declared with fervor. If I'm going to help others, I can't just be a victim. I want to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. There was a glint of pride in John's gaze as he studied her. "I can help you, but understand, it's dangerous. The galaxy doesn't play fair. You'll need to be prepared for that." "I understand," Samata replied, sincerity grounding her words. "I have seen the depths of darkness. I refuse to let fear dictate my future." John nodded, impressed by her determination. "All right, let's start with the basics: self-defense and some situational awareness." They spent hours practicing on the moon, John guiding her through movements and techniques that felt foreign to her at first. Each time she hit a target or executed a maneuver correctly, exhilaration surged through her. Guided by John's patient instruction, she began to find confidence in her body, the forgotten strength of a warrior reborn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the landscape, John stepped back to observe her progress. "You've got it. You're a natural, Samata." A rush of pride filled her as she smiled back, exhilaration coursing through her. "This feels empowering." Just then, the ship's alert system buzzed ominously. John immediately turned serious, urgency returning to his demeanor. "What is it?" "Scanners are picking up a nearby ship, a large one," Samata replied, her heart racing as the weight of her newfound skill sank in. "We need to move now," John commanded. "Get back to the ship. We have to get out of here." They sprinted across the terrain, adrenaline spurring them faster as the distant shadows of an approaching vessel began to loom. Samata's mind spun, fears colliding with her determination. "That could be them," she burst out, panic clawing at the edges of her resolve. "I'll ensure they don't catch us," John vowed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. When they reached the ship, John swiftly punched in the coordinates. "We need to jump systems. Hold on tight." As the ship powered up and prepared for warp, Samata grasped the edge of the console, her heart pounding. The stars outside twisted and elongated, the tension in the air palpable as they braced for the jump. "Ready? Here we go," John shouted, his voice steadying her. In an instant, the ship shuddered, and with a blinding flash of light, they barreled into the unknown realms of space. When the sensation of movement ceased, silence enveloped them, and John let out a breath of relief. "We made it," he murmured, eyes scanning the screens. Samata exhaled too, but the exhilaration of their escape was tempered by a tug of reality. They were still on the run, and their enemies were out there, watching. "What now?" Her voice trembled slightly, yet there was an intensity behind her question. John met her gaze, a determined light kindling in his eyes. "We prepare for the fight we didn't see coming. This isn't over yet." But unlike before, Samata felt bolstered by their shared vision, ready to face whatever threats lay ahead, armed not just with newfound strength, but with the resolve to reclaim her life. After the narrow escape, the atmosphere aboard the ship shifted. The weight of reality settled in, a reality where danger loomed behind every star. John was markedly more focused, his demeanor shifting from mentor to strategist, while Samata felt the need to adapt quickly to their circumstances. As they went through the routine of checking the ship's systems and keeping an eye on the radar scans, Samata's mind whirled with determination. She knew she had to equip herself to defend not only her own life, but also John's. "John," she said one evening as they gathered around the controls, deciding on their next course of action. "How do we find out who's after me? How do we stop them? I can't just hide forever." He looked thoughtful, fingers tapping rhythmically against the interface. "That's the hard part. Slavers often operate in the shadows, using false identities and safe havens to remain hidden. But we can gather intel, see if we can tap into the networks. There are always whispers." "Then let's do that," Samata urged, a fire igniting within her. "I want to be part of this. I want to find them." "All right," John consented, admiring her resolve. "But we must be cautious. I'll guide you through what we need to do." For the next few days, they worked tirelessly to collect information from various channels. John helped Samata navigate the ship's tech, teaching her how to operate the scanners and communicate using coded frequencies to avoid detection. With every passing moment, her confidence deepened. "Got it!" she exclaimed one afternoon, her fingers swiftly gliding across the controls. If we tap into this communication channel, we might find something. John leaned closer, excitement evident in his eyes. Yes, let's see what we can pick up. They settled in, listening as cryptic messages began to filter through the static. Hushed conversations echoed through the speakers, snippets of names and potential locations flying by. As Samata absorbed the information, something clicked in her memory, a name she recognized from her time as a captive. "Wait," she said suddenly, all color draining from her face. "That name, Karis. He was one of the traders at the auction. He was the one who bid against you." John's brows knitted together as he processed her words. "Karis. If he's involved, that puts us in immediate danger. He's not someone who takes losses lightly." Samata felt a chill creep down her spine, the walls of her past crashing down around her. "He won't stop until I'm found. We have to get to him before he gets to us." "Okay, then we need a plan," John replied, resolve burning in his eyes. "We need to find out where his operations are based. If we disrupt their network, we might gain the upper hand." Fueled by their desire for justice and freedom, they continued to decode the channels day and night until a lead emerged, a name and a rendezvous point for Karis and his crew on a nearby planet known for its hidden markets. "This is it," John said, scanning the information with intensity. "If we approach carefully, we can gather intel from the traders and find Karis." Samata felt both anxious and exhilarated. "Let's go. If we catch him unaware, we might have a chance." As they plotted their course, they prepared for the risks that lay ahead. Samata mentally prepared herself. She was no longer just a victim. She would reclaim her strength and aid in their fight. Their ship glided through the vibrant hues of space, finally landing on the surface of Amara Prime, the planet dotted with dense forests and hidden markets, where the desperate sought fortune and the unscrupulous thrived. As they stepped onto the rocky terrain, Samata absorbed the alien beauty around them, a chaotic blend of cultures, merchants, and travelers mingling. But within that chaos hid the danger they needed to confront. "Stay close," John instructed, his expression tightly wound with focus as they navigated through the busy streets lined with stalls of exotic wares and enticing aromas. Samata nodded, a swirl of emotions rushing through her. This would be her first real interaction with the outside world since her rescue. She felt vulnerable and strong all at once, a duality that both thrilled and terrified her. They stopped at a shady tavern known for harboring information. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with smoke, laughter, and murmurs of conversation. They settled into a corner booth, trying to blend in as John ordered drinks. "Let's see if we can get someone to talk," he said, scanning the room for potential informants. Samata clasped her hands on the table, her heart racing as she adjusted to the environment. She'd been trained to be discreet and to observe, but now she would actively partake in gathering information for her freedom. After surveying the room, John focused on a rugged man sitting alone, playing a game of chance. "That one," he whispered, nodding discreetly in the man's direction. "He looks like he might know something." Samata nodded, feeling the weight of anticipation settle on her shoulders. She and John approached the man, settling into the open seat across from him. "Mind if we join?" John asked, his voice calm yet firm. The man eyed them, skepticism etched on his weathered features, but he shrugged. "Suit yourselves." "We're looking for some information," John began, adopting a casual stance. "Heard rumors about Karis and his operations. We're interested in the latest dealings." The man's eyes glimmered with mischief. "You've got guts to go after Karis. He doesn't take kindly to interferences." "We can handle ourselves," Samata chimed in, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. At that, the man leaned in closer. "Maybe I could point you in the right direction. But trust me, you'll need a plan. Karis runs a tight ship, and he won't let you close without a fight." "We're ready for whatever comes," John said, looking the man dead in the eye. The bartender brought over their drinks, and the man appeared to contemplate his options carefully. "All right, I'll give you what I know, but this comes at a cost." Samada's heart raced as they exchanged the necessary pleasantries, knowing the stakes were high. As the man began to divulge information about Karis's next auction stage, plans began to crystallize in their minds. In that dimly lit tavern, shadows danced around them, and everything had changed. They were no longer mere survivors. They were becoming warriors determined to reclaim the stolen lives of countless others. And together, they would confront the darkness that threatened to consume them, together as allies in something more. In the shadows of the tavern, John and Samada finalized their plan with growing determination. Word of Karis's next auction had spread, and they had to act swiftly before the opportunity slipped away. "Tonight, we confront him directly," John said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Samada felt the gravity of his words. This was her chance to reclaim not just her freedom, but the dignity of those still trapped. "I'll need to be convincing," she replied. "Karis won't suspect me." "Exactly. You'll pose as a potential buyer. I'll be your backup, ready to intervene if anything goes wrong." They secured disguises, Samada draping herself in a cloak that obscured her features, while John donned attire that suggested wealthy status. As they neared the auction site, Samada's heart raced. This was the moment she had prepared for, yet her emotions were a tumultuous storm. Entering the auction house, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Men and women of dubious reputation mulled about, their eyes flickering with greed and anticipation. As she walked toward the stage, Samada focused. Karis had to feel her confidence. The auction began, Karis's slick voice cutting through the murmurs. "Welcome, friends. Tonight, we bring forth treasures beyond your wildest dreams." Samada observed him, every ounce of hate and fear boiling beneath her surface, but she pushed it aside. She raised her hand to bid on a young captive, feigning interest. "I'll start the bidding at 100,000 credits," she called out. Eyes turned towards her, and she felt Karis's gaze skewering her. "Ah, a wealthy buyer," Karis said, a smirk playing on his lips. "What do we have here?" John lurked in the background, keenly watching, ready to spring into action. As the auction continued, Karis's attention wavered. Glancing toward him, Samada confirmed he hadn't recognized her. This was working. As the biddings escalated, she mentally mapped out her next moves. Sudden chaos erupted as John triggered an alarm, revealing their presence and drawing Karis's attention. I know you," Karis thundered, realizing Samada's identity. "John, now!" Samada shouted, adrenaline propelling her forward. A clash erupted as John swept into action, tackling guards who emerged from the shadows, defending Samada as chaos reigned. She found herself at the center of the fray, fueled by her newfound strength. Karis shouted orders, his arrogance crumbling as Samada faced him. "You will pay for this insolence," he roared, panic pooling in his eyes as he grappled with his own fear. "No, Karis," she fired back, the bitterness boiling over. "Your reign of terror ends here." Samada swiftly evaded his grasp, countering with the techniques John had taught her. With each strike, she felt her former life fading, her past transforming into this fierce warrior ready to reclaim her future. The auction house turned into a battleground, and Karis faltered as John surged to protect Samada. The battle sparked a rebellion among others trapped in the auction, who rose against their captors. They surged forward, joining Samada and John in their fight for liberation. Finally, the tides began to change. Karis, cornered and desperate, attempted to flee, but was met with resistance. An enraged dealer turned on him, revealing the treachery within their ranks. The chaos led to his downfall as the people he had mistreated turned against him. Panting and bruised, Samada stood tall beside John as they faced Karis, now free from the shackles of fear. The tide of energy shifted toward liberation. People rushed to grab their freedom, reclaiming lives stolen from them. As they bundled Karis away, Samada turned to John, her eyes alight with resolve. "We did it. We actually did it." John squeezed her shoulder, a proud smile breaking through the stress of battle. "This was just the beginning. Together, we can save even more victims." In the glow of hope and newfound strength, They emerged from the chaos victorious, setting the foundation for the future. No longer shackled, Samata felt the weight of her past behind her, embracing the promise of a new life dedicated to helping others.